Okay, so now we come to the crux of it. 56 here. 14 reserved in here. Why? The 56 represents a warning that Israel is not going to get to this voting period, and therefore history will not complete due to her not observing the sabbatical years, which are 49 plus the 7 missed on the 49. And that's the basis for the restoration of the temple at 70 years, not 56. 70. 49 years after this, Daniel prays. Okay? So the 49 years that Israel missed, Daniel's going to end up praying about. But it's 56 years that are actually to be made up, and 7 of them can't be made up because they're due on the 49 that elapsed. Okay, but where does 70 come from then? Now watch. It took me a long time to get this right because there's so many numbers in Israel's history that are similar. It was a question of figuring out which the 14 were. Again, 49 plus the 7 due on the 49 she missed from over the 344 years from Rehoboam until 586 BC. That equals the 56, and that equals what you see in Psalm 90 verses 16 and 17. Okay, before I even get to translate it, you got to know the basis. Okay, so that being the basis, now we got the 56 here, but understand that that's time that actually went forward. Time only goes forward. You know that. That's time that went forward as 49 years. That was supposed to be used as sabbatical years, but weren't used as sabbatical years. Okay, so in order to fix that, you got to grant more time going forward to the tune of 49 years. But on those 49 years going forward, there are another 7 sabbatical years. Oh. Uh-oh. So now you got 14. See that? And it really ends up being 21. And this is the number that's going to be so prominent, you know, as we saw here in Psalm 90. We got a 21 here. We got 21 here, 21 here, 21 here, 21 here. Okay, and Paul's going to play on this. It's 21 because you got a minus 7 to start with. Those are 7 years that can't play on 49 already elapsed years that played wrong. So you got 49 negative and, well, let me do it this way. 49 negative and 7 negative are 56 negative. Oh, well, minus 56. Okay? That's a negative. Time only plays forward, but we have negatively used years. Okay, well, how are you going to make up a negative 56 with forward time? You have to credit 56 more years forward. Oops, but that only brings you to 0. And you've moved 56 more years forward. Okay, so the 56 years you moved forward to make up for the minus 56 years that had already moved forward, in order to get back to where you should have been the first time, you have to add another 56 years. Okay? You had minus 56. Okay? You have to go forward 56. But you also have to go forward another 56 to get to the positive 56 you should have had in the first place. Okay, well, then that ends up meaning 112 years. Okay? And Israel had 126 years in her time bank because her temple went down, right? In 586 BC. All right, so she had, here we go again, silly thing. Her temple went down with 126 years to go. And 112 years are needed to make it up. See where the 14 is? She's got 14 years that are still like, something's got to happen with them. Her 14 years still owed. But they can't play. They can't play during her time because she only had so much time left and she's going to go over her time budget. And in fact, what ends up happening in real time is that you got a 70-year credit here in order to rebuild. And then he's got to reimburse her for the 70 years. And that takes you to this point when Jerusalem it was rebuilt before, but it started to go down again because they were always attacking it. That's Nehemiah 6:15. Everybody thinks that that was a decree of a human king, and the scholars are wrong again, because God is doing the decreeing in Daniel 9:24. Hello. Okay, but still, it's got a different purpose. It shows that that by 446 deadline, the second 70, that okay, the temple was rebuilt, and so is Jerusalem, just as Daniel 9:25 predicted. And then your 49 years start kicking off here. Okay, 446 minus 396, and I'm 390. This is really 397. Late in 396. I mean, right, late in 397. Okay, so you got your 49 years starting in Daniel here. And then from this point come your 62 weeks, which is 434 years, which is equal to 364 years the temple was standing from here to here, plus another 70 reimbursement for the same reason that you had a 21. You had a negative plus a positive equals 0, but you got to have another positive to get to the positive, but except now you got a third positive to reimburse it. And that's why 21 is such a prominent feature here in Psalm 90, and will end up being a prominent feature in Paul. Let me just preview coming attractions. Okay, oh, it's not showing up here. Wait a minute. I'll have to do that in the next segment. I gotta reboot to do that. Okay, we'll resume again. Notice how this in the bottom window is Ephesians 1, 3 through 14. And in the top window, we're still looking at Psalm 90, because I haven't yet gotten to the 16th verse. I just want you to focus on the 21s here. Here's a 21 in Psalm 90. Here are two more, totaling 42, very pregnant. Okay, here's another 21. So there's a total of 4. Okay, and one of the 21s is in verse 16, which totals what? 56 syllables. And what is Paul doing here? 56 syllables right off the bat. And actually what he's telling you by that is that he's writing to you in the 56th year when Christ would have been 56. This is a real shocker. When I get to the full, going through this thing with Paul, it's just this will correct all of our calendars. Okay, he's writing in the 56 when Christ would have been 56. Okay, and there's 21 years to the millennium at that point, to the expected millennium at that point, which he's expecting to begin in what we would call 77 AD, which is, of course, 77 syllables of Isaiah, which we saw right here Ooh, okay. See? 77 syllables right here. See, because Isaiah is picking up on first David to last David. That's what Isaiah 53 is. Covering first David to last David. So Paul is picking up at the last David and saying, hi, the last David was born here. See, worthy of glory is God the Father. Father, see, he's fathering. That's Hebrews 10:5. Okay, and at this point, Christ would have been 56 years old if he had still been alive on earth. Okay, he was supposed to die when he was 40. Okay, which I haven't gotten to yet, which would have been our 37 AD. Alright, so he's using Anno Domini accounting. And scholars don't even know that yet, or maybe some of them do, but I couldn't find any. Okay, so the millennium was expected 21 years later. See, 21, 21. Okay, 56, 56. Okay, he's playing directly on the 56s, and of course you just saw the 56s in Isaiah. You see, this is done on purpose. There's the 84 syllables. Okay, here's the 77 syllables from Isaiah. Here's the 84 syllables, which are at the beginning of Psalm 90. Okay, see, right here. Okay, with a 21 in them, of course. See, it's all deliberate. Okay, so now again, why 21? Okay, because you have a -7, and time only plays forward, but we got a -7. Okay, and there are 140 years also to make up but we've only got 126 years left on the old temple when it dies. So that's a 14. Okay, well, a 14 to be made up over budget is a -14. Okay, you got that? This is another way of putting it. I put it in as many ways as I can. And then we got the -7 on the 49. Okay, so that's 21. Oh, and Moses knew all about it right here. And that's why the 14, because it's net, is in the decree. Okay, it's a total of 21 gross, but it's 14 net because Israel goes over her actual time budget by 14 years. But to get there, 21 years had to play. See, you know, because like, see, we had 126 years here. And she's going to get granted 140. So we're really only 14 years over at the end of the day. So there are two tribulational sevens, one of which is reserved for Messiah's time. That's in the 62nd week. And then the other one, because it couldn't play, is reserved in Daniel 9:27. And Paul is playing the role of Daniel here. That's why in verse 15 he prays, and that's why in Ephesians 2 he talks about two temples. He's praying for the building of the temple, just like Daniel did. And he patterns his prayer here in Ephesians 1, just like Daniel did. I haven't gotten to that yet, but wait till you see it. So 56 years is when Christ would have been 56 years old. 21 years later was the expected millennium, to begin in what we would call 77 AD. And then, you know, the purpose of God would have been completed. We would have been, by 84, is this clever or what? We would have been before him. See that? We would be holy and blameless at the end of. Everybody, because time that would have begun the millennium. Okay? And we would have been before him for 7 years already, because, you know, church is not in the tribulation. Okay? Is that cool or what? See how clever this is? All based on this. So I think maybe we're ready to actually see what verses 16 and 17 say. So let's go there. And we'll just keep Paul up in the, we'll just keep Paul up. since Paul starts his chronology where Moses leaves off, just like Isaiah does. Okay? Okay? Just bear in mind, Isaiah's picking up at the first David to the last David, and Paul's picking up at the last David, a.k.a. the Lord Jesus Christ. Okay? So keep this in mind. Keep Ephesians in mind as we go through the corrected translation of verses 90, 16 through 17. Okay? These are the two. Okay, now, this is so cool. Look at this. May your servants be caused to see. This is the word translated see. It's yireh. May they see. That they will see. But caused to see is actually more correct. Okay, it's hifil. May they be caused to see. Alright? The word for servants is abdeka. And it's plural servants. Meaning the Jews. Okay? And then your righteous work is palel. Paleka is the actual word in Hebrew. It's only used for God's work, your righteous work. Okay? And your majesty, and this is so cool, hadar. It's translated majesty. I think that's in the NASB, so I just copied it. To their children. And that's, beni chem. Now, hadar is a word that Isaiah will pick up on in describing how we spurned him at his incarnation. Walo hadar wanirehu, and that's in Isaiah 53:2. Okay. But Paul, I just want to kill myself when I look at this. The typical word that's used for hadar, okay, is translated glory in Greek. And here we go. Now, worthy of glory, eulogetas really means praiseworthy. But my pastor always would say, worthy of honor and glorification. Okay? And that's fine. But the idea is glory. Hadar means the kind of glory that man recognizes, respects, and praises. That's really what it means. Okay? The Lord didn't have, it's unfortunately mistranslated, comeliness in English Bibles of Isaiah 53:2. But it means the glory that you would recognize and be in awe of by human terms. Okay, well, worthy of glory, even as we understand it, is God the Father. You see how he's playing on that? Okay, remember, this is 56. He's talking straight back to these two verses, even as Isaiah does, but in a different context. Because this is, post-cross here. Okay, worthy of glory. Yeah. And what did it say? May your servants be caused to see your righteous work? Yeah. Righteous work is already risen. You see that? We have seen him. See, that's how 1 John begins. We have seen him. Yeah. Paul had seen him on the Damascus Road. So, may your servants, well, what's Paul? Be caused to see your righteous work? Yeah, Christ. Right here. See? Here's the righteous work of God. The Father, see, to the children. The Father to the children. The glory, the majesty, the hadar. Okay? Seen. But when he was seen, Isaiah 53:2, we didn't respect him. Okay, but now he's risen. And the only way you can still see him is by means of faith. But Paul is of the generation that saw him while he was here. Paul is of the generation that Isaiah 53:2 says despised him. So, gireh, may your servants be caused to see. Yeah, they were. And they despised him. Your righteous work. Yeah, and they considered him to have no glory when they saw him. Okay, but he's glorified now. He's risen. You see how Paul's playing on both Isaiah and Psalm 90? Is this rich or what? Okay? And bear in mind that he's going to total to the same 56. That's 21 syllables right here. And he's playing on the same keywords. Okay? See, who's blessed us? Who are we? Well, Paul is a Jewish son. See, part of the children. Seeing the righteous work of God. He's one of the recipients of Moses' prayer. And of course, he's writing to fellow Jews and Gentiles. And this particular letter is to the Gentiles, but, there were a lot of Jews who, became Christians. So they threw in their lot with the Gentiles. All right? And there were a lot of Jews who didn't, throw in their lot with the Gentiles, but they still were part of it. So children is really pregnant. Okay, so now we have clause 2. So clause 1, may your servants be caused to see your righteous work and your majesty to their children. All right, Paul's answering that here. Now there's another way, that there's another context I got to address, but right now just look at Paul's answer so you can see that this is exactly what he's doing. He's talking to this verse right here, just like Isaiah is in Isaiah 53:2. Okay, then we have this verse, 90:17. Now this is a killer. May the kind and sweet favor of the Lord be upon us, the work of our hands. Yadenu, right here. The work of our hands, affirmed and established. Okay, this is so rich. Hands, Isaiah 53:10. By his hand he will prosper. Is usually how it's translated in English Bibles. But it's got the connotation of him. First of all, it's Wachefetz Yahuwah Bayado Yitzla. The Chefetz Yahuwah is the second Yahuwah. God the Son agreeing to the contract, taking it in hand, because he's going to take on hands by taking on humanity. All right? And that's why Isaiah 53:1 reads as it does, the arm of the Lord has been revealed. Okay, see, he's taking on humanity, so now he has an arm. You got that? And Moses, of course, knows that because Messiah was always predicted to be God taking on humanity. So the work of our hands, yeah, the hands that will that are the progenitors of the hands that will have the nails in the wrists. Okay. And then this is konenu, koneneja, konena, sorry. All right, that's from kun. That means to vindicate, to defeat an enemy, rise up, defeat an enemy, vindicate, and establish. And that is predictive of the exact week that Messiah will rise and pay. In David's one courses, the 1 Chronicles 24 courses. Okay, that's in heedcal.htm, and you can look that up. That's one of the names of the priestly courses, and that's what happened that week, is that Messiah came and did that. Okay, so kun is very pregnant too. Establish, vindicate, yeah. That's what Messiah does. He establishes and he vindicates. He establishes us in him, and he vindicates us in him by means of paying for our sins. And then, of course, he'll come back the second time as a leader, a ruler, forever. Okay? So you see where Paul is getting this 56? Who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavens by agency of Christ. And I'm going to change this language a little bit in the translation you're going to see in future videos. By agency of Christ, even as he chose us. Okay? You see how all this is answering to Psalm 90:17 and Psalm 90:16. And of course in Isaiah, I already covered Isaiah 53:10. But then of course you got Isaiah 53:12 where he inherits everybody. And that's establishing the work of their hands, vindicating by owning, inheriting everything. All right? And that certainly is the kind and sweet favor of the Lord upon us. And that is certainly seeing his majesty. And that is certainly his righteous work. And we will certainly see it forever. In fact, that's the contract in Isaiah 53:10, which is that if he will pay, im tasim masham nafsho, if he will appoint himself, see, appoint, Seth, if he will appoint himself a substitute for sin, he will see long-lived seed. That's how that verse ought to be translated. It's usually mistranslated in English. He will cause to see. And then, of course, verse 11, Isaiah 53:11 says, Yireh, same word is used here. Yireh. He will see. Yishba, satisfied. He will be satisfied. Why? Because he's seeing his kids. He who had no descendants, Isaiah 53:8, will bear all the kids and then inherit them, Isaiah 53:12. Is this cool or what? So you see, Isaiah is talking straight to this, and Paul is talking straight to this as to the outcome of Messiah. No doubt about it. Now, it's a 56. It's not a 70. Why? Because in history, it might not have happened. Okay? Because in history, our boy had to finish the temple first, and that was the 70 years, and then had to get Jerusalem rebuilt, and that was the 70 years, and in between is Purim. Okay? So that was a real big question mark. Would those 56 years hamper Israel finishing her vote? And it almost did. It almost stopped it. And of course, if you want to, you can read the books of Nehemiah and Ezra and Esther especially. Esther is how they tried to stop it after the temple was rebuilt by, having Purim. Purim means lots, L-O-T-S. Lots drawn in order to destroy the Jews. And that was the year before David's last 490 ran out. But the temple's 490 was reestablished at 516. Okay? And that's why history was allowed to continue such that there could be a voting period, which is Daniel's, ends with the 49 years of Daniel, okay, right here, from here to here. And this is when canon gets completed in 396 BC. And then after that, you have the 62 weeks, which is the countdown to Messiah. Okay, and the 62 weeks ends not when he dies, but ends here. This, remember I said there was 1,000 for David based on his death. You got 1,000 based on his retirement. That was 30 AD when Christ actually died. That's also when the second 490 for the temple would have ended. So it's a double deadline here. But David's death would have occurred in 41-43 from Adam, the 1000th anniversary. That was the initial deadline because David ruled 40 years. Christ would be born king, so Christ would rule 40 years. And that, my dear, is 57 years. Remember our 56? 57 years at the beginning of the year, 56 years at the end of the year, to our scheduled millennium, which Paul has in mind and is balancing to, just like Isaiah and Moses were doing when Moses ended Psalm 90, right here. He's balancing to the millennium. Now, how does he do that? It's going to have to be reserved for the next video.